Sekou, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to this one for, I think, a couple of years.
It has been a long journey here, man, but I'm excited to finally be here.
Yeah, me too. So we met, my co-author of Paper Napkin Wisdom, your 5-step plan to life and business success, Jack Daly, saw you at Birthing of Giants at MIT, Endicott House, and immediately introduced us and said, hey, you got to get Sekou on Paper Napkin Wisdom. And we've just been dancing around time ever since. And I'm really glad to have you on. Sekou, could you introduce, because I know I'm excited about having you on, could you introduce yourself to my audience for people who don't know who Sekou is?
So my name is Sekou Andrews. I am a poetic voice. And a poetic voice is a new type of speaker and artist who blends inspirational speaking seamlessly with spoken word poetry. So I have the honor and blessing of traveling the world and inspiring audiences using a style of speaking that, blends speaking and poetry and storytelling and comedy and music and acting and sort of all of it into one almost performed keynote experience, if you will. That's the joy and the blessing of my life. It's what my business has been built on, in addition to, programs and trainings and so forth. And just living the artist entrepreneur life.
And Sekou, in the last 2 years, since I got introduced to you, really this has blown up for you. I mean, you've really become a global phenomenon. I've seen your stories popping up around the world. So congratulations on the phenomenal success you're having. Really.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
And there's so much passion in what you do.
Yeah. It's crazy. I've been driven by the mission to create commercially viable and accepted art form and industry for the art of spoken word poetry, so that whereby other poets could make a purposeful and profitable living. Have poets have something new to be when they grow up. But it's an uphill battle. There is no industry. So when you're trying to create a model where there is none, it's what I call a joyful challenge. Always a challenge, always your joy because it's yours. But who knew that poetry? Who knew that I'd be able to take it to these heights? It really is. It's something that I'm very proud of. I can't believe, and I'm grateful for.
Yeah, and I think this is going to bring us right immediately to your napkin. So you shared a really fascinating napkin, especially given what you just said in terms of introducing yourself and where you are in creating an entire vertical within the industry of, professional edutainment, let's call it that, for lack of a better word. So yeah. What was that napkin that you shared with me? Could you read it for everyone listening, please?
My napkin. Hear ye, a reading of Sekou's Wisdom napkin. It says, a story is only as great as its teller.
So why did you choose that to share with me today?
There are so many situations in life, in general, but especially with folks in business that focus on, they're driven by having a powerful vision, and it's all about the vision and the vision. You gotta have a vision, you gotta have a clear vision and so forth. And what I recognize is that vision is ultimately only as powerful as your voice. Your voice has got to be equally as powerful as your vision, because if the vision stays just inside of you, then it's not serving the world in the ways that you created the vision for. So you have to be able to communicate that vision. You have to be able to inspire people around that vision. You have to be able to galvanize people around that vision, and get them to walk into the water and survive the turbulence and be in the middle of the storm standing with you around that vision. And it takes a powerful voice for that. And so we have people that have these amazing stories in business and in life, but don't communicate those stories effectively. And they aren't galvanizing either team members or customers or investors or whoever it is around the story of their company, around the story of their brand. And that's why I started to realize that I built my business off of being a storyteller. There's so much of what I do that's the writing, and that's the crafting of the story. But after that, I believe that a powerful story should live strong on the page and come to life on the stage. You know, live strong on the page, come to life on the stage. People stop at the live strong on the page thing. Speakers only focus on their words and their script and their slides. Marketing companies only focus on the content. And they're not sitting back and saying, are we telling our story in the most powerful way? Or do we just have an awesome story? And so that's why I felt that there was people doing a disservice to, you know, to their business, to their careers, to their passions. And I felt like I really wanted to help the world understand that message and to help them become better tellers.
Yeah, I find what you're saying so fascinating because there's so many layers to this. I think, first of all, you know, there's going to be a group of people that hear this. A story is only as great as its teller. And they're going to say, shoot, that's why people don't connect with me. I'm not really that great. My journey is not that special. My purpose on my life, and, you know, the reason why I exist and the thing that fuels me isn't big enough. You know, what would you say to those people who are saying that?
People come to me. One of the things that I hear from folks is, man, Sekou, I could listen to you rock a phone book. I could listen to you read a phone book. And what is that saying? It's not saying this, the phone book is the richest, best content. You know what I mean? It's not saying the phone book is a riveting story and you were working with such great material, you could do no wrong. No, it's me having the confidence to say, give me a phone book. You want me to rock this crowd? Give me a phone book. I'm a killer phone book. I'm a murderer phone book. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. The confidence that I go to step onto any stage with is I have trained myself to know that to truly embrace the phrase, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. You know, and when you hear people talk about being able to sell snow to an Eskimo, that's coming from that salesman mentality that says it doesn't matter what the product is. Maybe it's iPhones and maybe it's pet rock. But you put it in my hands, I'm going to be able to tell its story effectively to have you, you know, completely inspired by this pet rock or this iPhone. And I think that's what I would say to someone who's focused on them feeling like they don't have the most powerful story, to possibly reassess and ask yourself, are you simply not telling your story in the most powerful way? I used to think that also. People have all these amazing stories of, oh, I was downtrodden, I was homeless, I was fighting a disease, I had cancer, I had my so-and-so died, and so-and-so, and that was my moment. You know, and you go, wow, but what if I don't have that moment? I used to think that I would never make it as a hip hop artist because I wasn't homeless first, or I wasn't selling drugs first. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It was like, that's all you hear. But at the end of the day, once you begin to realize, no, you start peeling away those layers, even just the micro stories of your struggles, even just the moments when you're on a high or you on a low, that's what connects to people. Because you're probably in front of an audience of customers or whoever that also don't feel like they have that amazing rags to riches story. They're just feeling like, I'm a regular old person. And if you can connect with them in all of your regularness and connect to their regularness in a way that feels completely captivating and delightful and anything but regular, that's the telling part. It's not the story part.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, let me say this again, as great as its teller, the teller, we, me, you, the teller of the story, we need to be rooted, because you said this so many times, it's your story, it's authentic, I mean, there's a tangible, contextual, muddy, grubby kind of honesty to that story that needs to come across. It doesn't always have to be wildly passionate. It's not always the guy with the biggest voice. It's not always the woman who comes across as perfectly relatable. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. It's not one size fits all. It's your size fits it.
Once you learn, think about a kid telling the story, right? Kids are the most amazing, riveting, sometimes annoying storytellers ever. But, you know, they get to the end and then start over or whatever, you know. But when you listen to a kid tell a story, they don't, you know, there's one speech I have that's on storytelling, and I talk about how a child never tells a story. A child magics a story. You know, a child is, they become the dragon. And the sound effect, and then it was rain. It was like pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter. You know what I mean? Like and you're talking about rain. What would we say? It was raining. They go, but it was splashing and splashing the pitter, and the water was coming all over my face, and you're just sitting there riveted by this person, and all they're doing is simply bringing their full body, their full vocal intonation. They're bringing you into the experience of what happened, and we release that as adults. We let go of that. We distance ourselves from that, and that's what I try to help people bring back into their storytelling, and I try to bring into mine is, learn from some of the best acting coaches that we have, which is little kids. Watch a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old tell a story, and look at what happens to their body. Watch how they become the story. How are you becoming your story? How are you putting your story into your body? How are you putting your story in present tense even? I mean, you can build system. One of the things I do with my trainings is I tell people, I want you to tell me the story of boiling water, so that they can break this whole, I got to have the best story, the best content thing. Just describe boiling water to me. And they go in and so forth. And then we start working on techniques to help them become that story, bring in characters, give me the extra voice, show me, use present tense so that you create a sense of suspense, use specificity, because the story is always in the specificity, right? You can drag a moment out by sitting back and saying, I was looking at Govind staring into the screen, and Govind looks back at me, and I'm staring into his eyes, and I look at his headphone, and I begin to wonder, what is Govind watching? What is Govind listening to in this? And all of a sudden you just begin to draw it out in present tense, and you storify the smallest, simplest, most mundane content. The more you can begin to recognize that you have that power, the more empowered you are to not be limited by what you feel the content limitations are.
Yeah, and I love this because you're talking about it, again, that we are the story. And if we are the story, we don't hide behind the jargon, the big descriptors saying, I was down and out, I was this, and now I am this. And we're not hiding behind those things. We're telling the story, our story, in present tense and being it because we are it. And now I want the audience, entrepreneurs, leaders in business, and difference makers, and they're out there saying, okay, wait, this works great for me in communicating with my team. I can see how I can use this in keynoting, but how does this play out, Sekou, when we're talking about our companies and our brands? Does it?
The same way. My approach to Stage Might, when I created my speaker training system, it was basically saying, I want you to be mighty on any stage that you touch, and you can be. And so there's a lot of like speak to sell programs and, how to make $1 million as a speaker and blah, blah, blah. Right. And I didn't necessarily want to do that. I wasn't drawn to that. I was like, I don't really care what your stage is, whether or not you want to be a professional speaker or whether you just want to rock a PTA meeting, whether you just want to kill the job interview,
or speak to your children.
Or speak to your children, because that's sales right there. If you got kids or a spouse, that's a sales job right there. You are a salesperson. And so, to me, it was more about making you comfortable and powerful in your own skin, in your own voice, and allowing you to recognize that the same techniques that you use to communicate to your team are the same techniques that you can use to communicate powerfully and dynamically to investors, are the same techniques you can use to communicate powerfully and dynamically to customers, to colleagues, to clients, to partners, to bosses, to leadership, to employees. I work with a lot of executives, and we have to do so much unlearning first, where the unlearning of just, they feel like they are speaking to business cards. They approach the stage like they're speaking to business cards and not the people.
Or worse, they're speaking to opportunity, right? They're speaking to what happens if I get this wrong? This is high stakes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's all the chatter in their head. That's all the chatter in their head. But I mean, even just their approach, it's this sense that it's almost like I have to get up here and prove that I'm CEO. And what does that naturally make you want to do? It makes you want to revert to the data and the official messaging of the company. And I always tell them, nobody came to this event to hear you prove that you're CEO. I've never gone to an event and be like, let me see if Govind's really CEO of this business. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't happen. Yeah. You go, move me, connect to me, touch me, reassure me that I'm in the right place. Let me know that I will be successful if I join you in this journey. That's what they're hoping for. Those are all human needs. So if you're talking to an audience of human beings, the best way to connect with a human being is to be a human being first yourself. Allow yourself to shed off all of that, all the data points and all of the official company line. And I tell them, get up there and tell that story about your kid. Yeah, get up there and tell that story about your worst failure. Get up there and tell those stories that are very human moments. Let the rest of the conference, let the rest of your team give the bullet points and the messaging and so forth. But let them walk away from you going, I loved her. Oh gosh, this guy was amazing to me. Oh, he touched me. I felt a connection. And that will then translate as I'm in the right place.
Yeah. So, you talked about this in a really interesting entrepreneurial journey for yourself off the top, right? Sekou, you talked about this journey that you're bringing the spoken word into a vertical that doesn't exist, literally creating an industry that wasn't there. Speaking was there, edutainment was there. Yeah. I mean, Tony's been doing it for 25, 35 years. Yeah. So people have been doing edutainment, but you're doing it differently, creating a vertical within that sector. And when you're doing that, that's doing something. You're creating something.
Yeah.
What was the narrative that you played out to psych yourself up and get yourself in that zone? That you could be that story, that you could open that vertical, that you could shed light on this?
There have been so many access points to it. But really, I think I always go back to sort of this moment when I first decided to go full time. There's not, like you said, there's not really a model out there for what it is that I do. And there really aren't that many models for full-time poets even. And after I had been chasing...
Not alive anyway.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Or successful, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ones that didn't burn out and ultimately go get a job and so forth. And so I didn't have much to sort of follow and just go, okay, cool, just follow this path and you can do it too. But after the quick backstory of me pursuing music, chasing record deals, chasing Hollywood as an actor and as a hip hop artist and so forth, going to spoken word venues, falling in love with poetry, and then thinking I'm more excited right now about, sort of being an entrepreneur, pioneering trails in spoken word than I am just sort of pursuing the same crumbs in hip hop or acting that everyone else was. Once I made that decision, and at that time I was a fifth grade teacher at an elementary school in South Central LA. And so then it was like, all right, well, I had to figure out when I'm gonna quit my job and when I'm actually step out and do this. And I did everything I could to kind of build my name up on the scene and, learn from my peers around me and so forth. But like with any entrepreneurial venture, like you do all the preparation, but there still comes that moment when you just have to close your eyes, pinch your nose, and leap off the cliff, and trust that the wings you built will work. And so I finally reached that point after my fourth year. I quit my job on a Friday, closed out the year. That following Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, I was doing a show in Santa Monica that was my CD release show. I walked on, I did one of the best sets of my life. I stepped out onto the streets of Santa Monica Boulevard, surrounded by audience members and crowds, and I made my rent in CD sales that night. And I remember when the crowd dispersed, I remember looking up at the sky like, oh, snap, I can do this. It was like, for the first time, it was like, this is real. I'm not going to be a failure. And the next day I went off and I took off to do a tour of DC, what I call a safe tour, where my girlfriend was staying at the time. So I knew I had a place to sleep, and brother had some bread in the fridge. And I came home with a wad of cash after a week-long tour. And then 3 weeks later, I went to Atlanta where my mom was, did a safe tour, and came home with a wad of cash. And then, about a month or so later, I won the National Poetry Slam Championship, becoming the top poet in the nation. And then I did my first national tour, and then I won the championship again, and then my second national tour, and so on and on and on. And the way I tell the story, at least according to my belief system, it felt like God was saying, what took you so long? Like, I've been holding all these blessings. I've been holding all this stuff for you that's been yours. Here, come take your stuff. I'm tired of holding it. And once I did that, once I seized it, it became this sort of nonstop journey of me really living into my purpose, living into what it is that I was put on this planet to do, recognizing that, trusting in it, letting that get me through the hard times and the challenges, but ultimately embracing it,
and embracing it for you, right? I mean, there's a really great, he's actually a media theorist. He's a guy, his name is Marshall McLuhan. You're going to like looking him up if you haven't heard of him before. But Marshall McLuhan. McLuhan. And Marshall McLuhan had this journalistic theory about, and this is interesting times for this, right? Is the medium the message, or is the medium greater than the message? And then he sort of said, no, wait a minute. The medium is the message. And what I think is interesting, and what jumped out to me through your story, is you were the message. When you surrendered to this idea that I am the message, I am my message. And this is what your napkin feels like to me, is that we are the message. And when we sit in that seat and let ourselves be that message, we become exponential. I mean, that does that sound right? Does that feel right to you from what you're saying?
Well, you have to, in the same way that I talk about how you have to become your story on stage, you have to become your story in life, you know?
Become your story in life.
Yeah. Like you have to become your story. And for me, the challenge, the way the world was trying to end my story was with the words broke poet. That was the world's ending to my story. That was the world's beginning to my story. It was like, oh, this won't happen. There's no such thing as people ask, what do you do? And I say,
and that's somebody else's story, right?
Right. Exactly. I say, I'm a poet, and they say, okay, but what do you really do? What do you do for money? And so for me, I was like, but that's not my story. And I'm not going to let you guys make that my story. I believe in a different story, that this story will have another ending. But I had to go write those chapters. I had to become it. So when I talk about quitting to become a full-time poet, there was kind of a common trajectory of a poet, where you're doing clubs and cafes, and then maybe you start doing bigger shows, college shows, et cetera, checks get bigger. But then that was kind of it. Like then maybe you rock clubs here and there, but a lot of times you quit, you go get a job, you go into academia, you teach, and I just felt like there's something else there for me. And it wasn't until I started doing a few things for businesses and noticing this trend where you would have a lineup of speakers that'd be broken up by an artist. And the artist's job, the speaker's job, was to deliver the content. The artist's job was to raise the energy of the room, crack open the hearts and the spirits and the minds to get you ready to receive the information from the next lineup of speakers for content. And that's why I just found myself going, why does it have to be separate? Why can't we do both at the same time? And that was when I realized, well, that's a story that's not written. The world is saying, are you an entertainer or are you an educator? Are you a speaker or are you an artist? My answer was yes. So I had to go create the space for yes. I had to create the language for yes. I had to create the experience. I had to show them what that story looks like. So I had to become the story. I had to be the teller of my own story.
You had to be yes.
Yeah.
You had to be it. You had to be what yes was.
Yes. Right? Speak, Govind, speak.
Right? You had to be what yes was, because if you weren't being it, how would we even know what that was?
That's right. And they don't. It's what I do is so experiential that it's like you tell somebody, oh no, I don't get it. I tell you, and you experience it, you tell somebody, they might get a little bit more. But when they experience it, when they watch it, it's instant. They're like, oh, that's it. So I have to then, like you said, I become the story, I become my yes, and I'm constantly in the process of telling that story to the world until the world finally finds that the word poetic voice rests easy on its tongue. It's natural on its tongue. They get it. And I know, okay, my job is done.
Yeah, man. Like when I hear this, this week, I was speaking to the CEO of a fairly large company, and she was telling me about how in her company, they're different. They're different. They're just saying they're different, and they are different. They're amazingly, everything they do is different. Everything, the way they treat their customers in a very commodity-based industry, in an industry that shouldn't exist. Like they're in the travel business, and they've got a business in the travel business that's booming, and they're different because they're their yes. And it's just like you said, they show everybody every single time how different they are. And I love this. You got to be your yes. You got to show them what different looks like, because we all talk about different.
That's right.
We're different. We're the best customer service, the best whatever. Right. But you got to be that difference, right?
I always say there's a piece that I have called Be Voiceful. That's the anchor and the spine for a whole keynote on power of voice, public speaking, dynamic communication. And one of my favorite lines from it is, you are what you say. So don't say what you do until you do what you are. For only when your actions move with your words will your words move others to action.
That's beautiful. I don't think we should say anything after that. Sekou, I mean, this was amazing, and I love that poem. I love this idea of being your yes. I love how we got to that place, and how you've been your yes, and have really touched the lives of a lot of people around the world.
Yeah.
A lot of what you talked about in terms of the links and opportunities that you provide are going to be in the show notes. And we can find more about you at sekouandrews.com, right?
That's right. Come join my tribe. Find out more about me in terms of how you want to grow, or if you just want to know more about me off stage in my life, or you just want inspirational material and content, hit the website and pick the group you want to be a part of, and I'll keep sharing.
It's awesome. Thanks, Sekou.
Thank you, Govind. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you.